You are likely spending 4 hours hovering over a kitchen counter for a single loaf of bread. I did this once. I watched the clock, kneaded until my shoulders ached, and feared leaving the house. But good bread does not demand your labor. It asks only for water, flour, and time. You do not need to hover over a bowl to feed your family pure bread. Across a full 24 hours, the true physical work takes less than 5 minutes, 270 seconds of contact, divided into 3 brief visits. The natural yeasts and cool air do the heavy lifting while you sleep, work, or walk. This simple rhythm frees you from rigid timers. By using cold cellar storage or your kitchen icebox, you can pause the entire process. You can delay your bake from 8 to 40 hours without losing loaf height. The crumb will not turn too sour to eat. The dough waits on your life instead of your life waiting on the dough. If your work runs late tomorrow, you simply bake the next morning instead. It breaks the day into an easy, quiet habit. You mix the flour in the morning, fold it at night, and chill it. Set it in an iron pot when you want a fresh loaf. No heavy machines, no sore wrists, just good bread made with simple ingredients on your own schedule. 2 minutes to mix, 1 minute to fold, 90 seconds to load the pot. Here is the entire master routine in 3 small moments. First, your ingredients. You need 500 grams of strong, unbleached bread flour, 360 grams of cool water, 10 grams of fine salt, and 50 grams of cold starter straight from your jar. This quiet method asks for strong bread flour because standard wheat flour cannot hold its shoulders up without hard kneading. You buy nothing special for this. No electric mixers, no proofing baskets, no expensive stones. A plain glass bowl and an everyday covered pot will do the work. Your hands touch the dough just 3 times. The first touch is the morning mix. It takes 2 minutes. You stir the flour, water, salt, and cold starter together until no dry dust remains. Cover the bowl and walk away for the day. The second touch is the evening fold. It takes 1 minute. Before you sleep, you gather the dough from 4 sides into a tight round, drop it into a covered vessel, and set it into the cold cellar or your icebox. That cool rest builds structure while you rest. The third touch is the next day bake. It takes 90 seconds. When you want fresh bread, you lift the cold dough out, place it into a hot covered pot, and set it into the oven. That is the entire sequence. 3 short visits, 5 minutes of actual effort, and 0 fussing over clocks. The first touch takes place before the morning kettle has boiled, and it begins with a jar most folks treat far too gently. Take your jar of sourdough starter straight from the cold icebox. Do not feed it yesterday. Do not wait 4 hours on the counter for it to bubble and peak before you begin. Most folks believe starter must be fed in a separate jar before it can raise a loaf. That single belief costs 4 hours of waiting and hovering. The starter wakes up faster inside your 500 grams of fresh flour and cool water than it ever would trapped alone in a small glass jar. All the food it needs is already sitting right there in the fresh grain. Spoon 50 grams of that cold, dormant starter directly into your bowl. Add your 360 grams of cool water, 500 grams of strong flour, and 10 grams of salt. Now take a wooden spoon or your bare hand. Stir everything together for 90 seconds. You are not kneading. You are only mixing until every speck of dry white dust disappears into a rough, shaggy clump. It will look messy and wet. That is right. Do not try to make it smooth. Set a plate or a damp cloth over the top of the bowl. Walk away. Leave it on your counter for the entire workday, 8 to 10 hours, while you tend to your daily chores. This simple swap saves 4 hours of watching a starter jar. The only trade is that the first rise in the bowl takes 2 or 3 hours longer to get moving, which fits your workday instead of fighting it. While you leave for your daily duties, something remarkable happens inside that quiet stone bowl without your fingers touching it once. You do not build the strength in dough. Water builds it for you. When flour and water sit together, the dough starts getting stronger by itself. It is a slow, quiet weaving. Heavy kneading tries to force those protein links together with brute muscle. Let your dough rest on the counter. Then stretch a small piece to test it. Think of what that spares you. Your shoulders do no work, yet the resting dough forms the very same elastic web. You can see this web with your own eyes when you return home. Wet your fingers with a little tap water. Pinch a small piece of the rested dough and gently stretch it apart. It stretches into a thin sheet you can nearly see through. Leaving the dough alone brings better flavor and color. That is why you should not knead after the long rest. When a machine beats dough for 12 minutes, it whips oxygen deep into the grain. That harsh air bleaches the natural oils and strips away the rich taste of the wheat. Passive resting protects the grain. The flour keeps its creamy golden color and bakes into a loaf with a deep, nutty sweetness you can never get from rushed bread. Yet how fast this quiet weaving happens depends on one simple thing you poured from the tap this morning. The water you pour from your tap this morning sets the exact clock for your entire day. You control the rising speed with one simple dial: water warmth. We want the mixed dough to land at 75 degrees Fahrenheit. At that warmth, the bowl rises peacefully for 8 to 10 hours and waits for your return. Because we use no heavy machines, there is zero friction heat to worry about. The tap water alone decides when the dough finishes. Here is the 3-number seasonal formula I use at the monastery bakehouse. Take 150 as your target balance number. Measure your room warmth. Subtract your room number from 150, and the leftover number is the exact water warmth to pour into your bowl. In a chilly winter kitchen sitting at 65 degrees, subtract 65 from 150. You need water at 85 to 90 degrees. That gentle warmth keeps the wild yeasts active, while frost sits on the glass. In a warm summer kitchen sitting at 78 degrees, the arithmetic gives you 72. But when the heat climbs past 80, you must go colder. You use chilled well water or tap water down at 60 degrees to put the brakes on the wild yeast. In a few minutes, I will show you how that cold water prevents summer dough from turning into running batter before supper. This simple math lets you set the pace. You never have to rush home to save your dough. The danger comes when folks feel their room is too cold and try to hurry the bowl with false heat. Setting your bowl on a warm radiator or beside a wood stove is the easiest way to ruin tomorrow's loaf. I made this mistake 40 years ago in the bakehouse when winter mornings were bitter. I set the bowl near the iron flue to help it along. The loaf baked into a heavy brick with a sunken top and a gray, gummy bottom. When dough sits on a hot surface past 100 degrees, the extreme heat kills the wild yeast right at the base. At the same time, the top stays sluggish and cold. That harsh gap cooks the bottom starches into paste before they ever hit the oven, while the center weakens and collapses into a wet hole. Here is the safe way to warm cold dough without spending a dime on electric mats. Take an ordinary camping cooler, an insulated picnic chest, or even a deep wooden cabinet. Set your covered bowl inside. Next to the bowl, set a sealed jar or bottle filled with tap water heated to 130 degrees. Close the cooler lid. That single bottle warms the sealed air gently to 82 degrees and holds it steady for 4 hours. There are no drafts, no hot spots, and no burnt yeast. It creates a quiet, spring-like shelter that lets the wild yeast feed evenly from top to bottom. This keeps you from tossing $4 worth of pure flour into the compost heap when winter drafts chill your countertops. If your kitchen runs warm, skip the box entirely. and let the counter do the work. When you return home in the evening, your dough has risen double. Now comes your second touch, exactly 60 seconds of work. You will not need to clean messy flour or spend 20 minutes shaping dough. Leave the dough right inside its bowl. This is the entire evening routine, and it takes 60 seconds. Wet your right hand with cool tap water so the dough will not stick to your skin. Reach your fingers down along the far edge of the bowl. Slip under the dough and pull that edge gently upward. It will stretch easily without tearing. Fold that flap down over the middle. Turn the bowl a quarter turn and do it again. Reach under the side, lift the edge upward, and lay it across the center. Turn the bowl a third time, lift, and fold. Turn it a fourth time. Lift the last corner and fold it over the top. That is the 4-pull envelope fold. In 20 seconds, without dirtying a counter, you have gathered the relaxed dough into a tight, smooth package. Now prepare its resting cradle. Take a clean bowl, a proofing basket, or even an ordinary vegetable colander from your cupboard. Lay a plain linen kitchen towel inside. Dust the cloth lightly with flour so the wet dough will release cleanly tomorrow. Slip your wet hand under the folded dough. Lift it from the mixing bowl and set it smooth side down onto the floured linen. Fold the loose cloth corners over the top to keep out drafts. Pick up the bowl and place it straight onto a shelf in your refrigerator or cold cellar. Aim for 38 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. At that temperature, the yeast slows right down to a crawl, while the loaf holds its shape and quietly deepens its flavor until you are ready to bake. Once the bowl goes cold, the dough slows down and waits for you. At 38 degrees, everything changes. The yeast sleeps in the cold, so the dough will not rise too high. But the good microbes keep working. They stay awake in the cold, quietly converting natural starches into deep, nutty flavor and strengthening the loaf walls. This gives you total control over the clock. You have an 8 to 48 hour window where the dough fits your schedule. If you want fresh bread with your morning coffee, 8 hours of cold sleep is plenty. If tomorrow turns busy, leave the bowl alone. Bake it 24 hours later for supper, or leave it sitting cold for 48 hours until the weekend. The loaf only grows more flavorful and easier to digest with that extra rest. After 48 hours, the dough can get weak and turn too loose. But anywhere inside that 2-day window, you bake when your hands are free. The chill gives you one more practical gift. Warm, room temperature dough is soft, sticky, and clings to your fingers when you try to slash the top. It drags and deflates. Cold dough behaves like chilled butter. The surface tightens into a smooth, firm skin that slides cleanly out of the linen cloth. When you run a sharp razor across the crest, the blade cuts like a hot knife through soft wood. The score opens wide in the heat instead of tearing into ragged edges. You gain honest flexibility and clean loaves with 0 midnight alarms or rushed schedules. By morning, you will know if the loaf is ready for the fire. Your index finger will tell you in 2 seconds. Dust your index finger with a pinch of dry flour. Press your fingertip gently into the side of the cold dough, about ½ an inch deep, and pull your hand back. Watch how that small dent behaves over 5 seconds. The dough speaks plainly if you know what to look for. If the dent pops right back out like an inflated rubber ball, the loaf is underproofed. The gluten is still too tight to expand fully. Put the bowl back into the icebox for another hour or two. If the dent slowly and partially fills back up, leaving a soft, gentle dimple on the surface, the dough is perfectly ripe. The air pockets have expanded to their peak strength. It is ready for the fire. If the dent does not push back at all, and the skin around your finger sighs and stays sunken, the dough is fully proofed and nearing its limit. Do not wait any longer. Put it in the oven now so the loaf keeps its height. Now begins your third and final touch. Tear off a square of plain parchment paper and lay it flat on your counter. Unfold the linen corners of your resting bowl. Invert the basket gently over the paper. The chilled round will slide out cleanly onto the center, holding its tall dome shape without sticking. Take an ordinary razor blade or a very sharp kitchen knife. Hold the blade at a slight angle against the top of the loaf. Make one swift, confident slash across the crest, about half an inch deep from shoulder to shoulder. Do not saw back and forth. One clean cut lets steam escape, so the bread rises instead of bursting out the sides. Lift the paper corners with both hands. Heat the oven and covered pot to 450 degrees first. Lower the cold loaf, paper and all, directly into your preheated covered iron pot. Drop the lid in place, slide it onto the middle rack, and close the oven door. Now bake 20 minutes covered, 10 to 12 uncovered, then cool for 1 hour. Set your oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. You do not need a commercial stone hearth. A heavy iron Dutch oven or any thick covered pot traps the steam perfectly. Keep the heavy lid firmly on for the first 20 minutes. Inside that sealed iron pot, moisture rushing out of the wet dough cannot escape. It bathes the expanding loaf in pure steam. That steam keeps the outer skin soft for 10 minutes. It lets the bread rise fully before the crust hardens. After 20 minutes, put on heavy mitts and take the lid off. Leave the loaf exposed to the dry heat for 10 to 12 minutes. Watch the pale dough transform into a deep, glossy, chestnut brown when the ridges of the slash turn dark amber and the kitchen fills with the rich aroma of toasted grain. Lift the pot out. Now comes the hardest step of the entire morning. You must leave the loaf alone. Set the hot bread onto a bare wire rack. Step away for 1 full hour before your knife touches the crust. I ruined dozens of good loaves as a novice by rushing this final step. Cutting into steaming bread ruins all your careful work. While the loaf rests on the counter, the interior starches are still finishing their bake. Trapped steam is slowly making its way out through the cooling crust. If you slice it open while hot, that rushing moisture collapses the crumb and leaves the center gummy. Give it 60 minutes. The interior will set into a light, tender crumb that holds its shape. When storing your daily bread, avoid the icebox entirely. The refrigerator makes bread go stale faster than the counter. It will stay soft for 4 full days. When you hold that warm, singing loaf in your hands, you realize how little labor was truly needed. Before you begin, hear this honest truth about what will come out of your oven. This method gives you a dark, rustic hearth loaf with an open crumb and a crisp crust. If you desire feather-soft, sweet sandwich bread, this is not the recipe for it. Soft sandwich bread needs butter, milk, sugar, and stronger mixing. Our quiet monastery routine asks only for flour, water, salt, and patient cold air. You get an honest country loaf with real chew, hearty substance, and deep flavor when you accept what the grain wants to do. Bread stops being a battle with the clock. In 40 years in the monastery bakehouse, I have found that peace returns to your home when you stop fighting natural rhythms. 5 minutes of quiet stewardship across 2 days is all the wheat asks of you. You do not have to cook for hours to feed your family well. You simply mix, fold, let the cold air do the heavy labor, and trust the fire. Baking your own loaf grounds your morning in quiet gratitude. It turns an ordinary chore into a small act of service that fills the house with warmth. Tell me in the comments below, what grain do you love to bake with at your own table? And when this loaf cools on your counter, slice a thick piece, butter it well, and share it with someone who lives down your lane. May your hands find rest, and may your table never lack daily bread.